Welcome to the Mind Money Spectrum podcast, where your hosts, Aaron Ogti and Trishul Patel, go beyond traditional finance questions to help you explore how to use your money to achieve the freedom you want in life.
In this episode, Aaron asked Trishul Kinder's 3 questions. These questions are designed to help you consider what freedoms in life you want to pursue. They help provide clarity to determine how you can use your money to live the life you want. Money is not your most precious commodity, it's time. This episode is not about checking things off your bucket list, but rather it's about prioritizing your actions around the things that you value the most. And now, onto our conversation.
Hi, my name is Aaron Ogti. I'm a financial advisor in the Bay Area, and I'm here with Trishul Patel, a wealth manager on the East Coast.
Hi, Aaron. Great to be here today, and thanks everybody for listening.
Great to be here as well. Today, we're going to be talking about life planning and the Kinder Institute approach to life planning. A few episodes back, the life planning and Kinder's 3 questions came up, and I kind of pushed it off because I wanted to be able to devote more time to it. But today, we're going to be getting into Kinder's 3 questions, life planning, and why we find that important as financial advisors in trying to help our clients. So first, Trishul, for you, when you hear life planning, what comes to mind? What do you know about that, or what do you think about?
What comes to my mind is the notion that I think I've expressed over a few podcasts, or at least earlier in the show. And it's a notion that what we're really trying to do with all of these talks around money is to essentially be happy. And it's not really only about gaining financial freedom. It's about gaining freedom in our lives. So that's what life planning kind of means to me. It's shifting the focus from just dollars and buckets and investments to what do you really want to do with your life, and how can we help individuals get there? And I think the focus is basically finding ways to improve quality of life in the most efficient way possible. And also understanding that when people have enough money, it's not necessarily about what to do with the money. It's also about how to maximize your time. Because at the end of the day, it's not money that's our greatest commodity or our most precious commodity. It's actually time. So that's what I think about when it comes to life planning.
I like that. And if I try to sum it up very succinctly, it ends up being, when I'm talking to clients, even if we get all of the money questions correct, we optimize taxes, we have the perfect balance of risk and return, and we're making all the right financial decisions. What is the money for? How are you using this money to live the life you want? And when I ask that question, a lot of times clients don't quite have a clear answer. They think about it, they might stumble, and they sometimes had not even actually thought about that specifically. They have an idea of what they like to do, and they have an idea that they need to make good financial decisions, but there isn't really a tie between what is the life they really want to live. And that's one of the things that I found that Kinder's 3 questions have really helped with, is forcing clients to be introspective about the life that they really want to lead, sharing that with me so I can help guide them and make the right decisions that are in line with the life you want to lead. Because there is usually some kind of disconnect about what I'm currently doing now, where I'd like to be, and how I get there. Whether it's, oh, I can't do this for some reason, or I have to wait until the future to get to that level. So there's some kind of disconnect. And my goal is to help resolve that disconnect, whether we can do it now or have a plan in place for specifically how we're going to get there, instead of just hoping that it happens at some point in the future.
That's very interesting, Aaron. So you're saying you can get all this from 3 questions?
Pretty close. Well, it's no, I guess I say the 3 questions are really designed to have clarity about what that freedom is. That they're able to identify specifically what they want to do with their life. What is that freedom that they can start making specific decisions towards, as opposed to being a little more of an amorphous, oh, I want to be financially independent kind of goal. And that's what the 3 questions are designed. It's not the plan per se, it's the concrete, solidified goal that allows good planning to help you get there.
Wow, that sounds quite intriguing.
So today, I'm going to use Trishul as a little bit of a guinea pig, and Trishul has agreed to answer these 3 questions. And we're going to go through them in order, and I'm going to also explain why we ask these 3 questions, but it is designed to be very, very personal, and I'm not expecting Trishul to cry, but when you get into these deep emotional conversations, sometimes people do cry. That seems to be a common result. Are you ready for this, Trishul?
I'm a bit nervous, but yeah, let's do it.
Okay. The first question from George Kinder, the founder of the Kinder Institute. If you were financially independent now, let's say maybe you won a small lottery, maybe your stock options paid off big, or you just got enough money to do whatever you want. But the idea is that you don't have to worry about money to live the lifestyle you want. Okay? This is not you won $1 billion lottery. You're not buying a sports team. You're not buying a yacht. You have enough money where you never have to worry about it to live the life you want. So now work has become optional. What do you do with your time?
This is a good question. I like the fact that it causes you to put down, the money hat and figure out, okay, well, now what are you going to do if you have the money? And I'd say for myself, my first gut reaction is, okay, I'm going to do a bunch of traveling, and I'm going to go here and see that, and catch up on a few, books and movies that I haven't done. But in all honesty, I think there's more that I would like to navigate my life towards if I was in this situation. And I think what it really means to me is devising a way to live my life where I'm focusing on what I want to do that's most valuable to me on a day in and day out basis. So we talked a little bit about this in some of our previous episodes, the notion that it's good to go for happiness, but if you lean too much towards short-term gratification, you may be leaving things on the table that might make you even happier in the long term. And for me, I'm pretty big on self-improvement and figuring out ways to be happier from a sustainable standpoint. So I think that's what I might focus on. And it's kind of what I've been doing with my life as well, in terms of transitioning away from a corporate job to more of an at-home business. But even with more flexibility, I think what I would do is design my life so that I'm living each day doing things that I think provide me with satisfaction in the short, medium, and long term. And let me make that a little more specific. And I've kind of said this before, it's great to have money to do anything, but having too much might mean you would do nothing. And that's not ideal either. So for me, I like learning. I like putting what I know to use. And I also like growing as an individual. What that might mean for in relationship to this question is, I think I would like to construct my life where I could spend a few hours each day working towards either doing some writing, recording a podcast with my pal Aaron, or doing some sort of work where I can kind of contribute my knowledge to others. So I think that might be part of what I want to continue doing. And I think at the same time, I want to find a good balance between my family, and including my wife and my daughter, in addition to my extended family. So Honestly, as I'm thinking through this first question, I feel like I'm on this track right now, to be honest. That's the impression I get.
I would agree with that. And it's also because we've talked about the FIRE movement and you've already pursued financial independence so aggressively. This does not surprise me. This question I knew would kind of be the easiest one for you, but I do want to ask you to get a little more specific. So I like that you said you want to keep working on self-improvement and personal growth, not that you wanted to build a business to make more money. Because again, we're trying to remove the money aspect from this. So what are some of the specific things that you're going to do with your time if you do not have to worry about money?
Right. So as far as that self-improvement aspect goes, I believe that something I've enjoyed doing, which I haven't done when I was more career focused, is reading, for example. I used to read nonstop, mainly fiction, to be honest. I enjoyed a lot of books over the years, and I know there's hundreds more stories and lives and passions that I can uncover through reading that I want to turn more attention to. So I'd say that that's thing one. Something, for the mind, something for the body. I used to also do yoga in the past, and something that I used to do when I was probably before I had my daughter more
Mm.
rigorously. So that's something I'd like to pick up as well. Something, for my body to keep in better shape. And as far as a good social mix goes, I think I'm doing pretty well with that. I try to visit friends and family a couple of times a month, and that seems pretty good for me right now. So I think that aspect is going pretty well.
I do notice that there is a difference with this question between those who have kids at home versus those who either don't have kids or kids have grown up and left the house. And the kids at home tends to impact this question. So for yoga, it wasn't necessarily the career aspects that are getting in the way, it's kids and their schedules, which is extremely common among parents.
Yeah, that might be true. We did recently start doing yoga with my 2-year-old, so at least this allows her the ability to sit down and just be a little bit less mobile, but more focusing on being present with her breath or stretching and things like that. So I think that helps calm all of us down a bit.
I remember with my daughters when they were younger, we would do some child yoga where it's like standing on one foot. Or I think it's carrot. Where you just stand straight up with your hands above your head. I forget the exact name of the pose. But
Right. I think there's another name, sun pose, where you're pretending like you're full facing the sun, with your hands up and
okay,
taking the heat in.
I will defer to your expertise.
Oh, I'm nowhere near an expert. I think I made that up, by the way.
Okay, so the purpose of this question and why most people actually have trouble answering this is so many of people's decisions about life in general are made with money in mind. I can't just drop everything and go traveling the world because I need to be at work. I need to make enough money to support my lifestyle. Or I start to think about, well, I don't want to do this because traveling the world will cost money. Even if I could afford the time, like I could take vacations, it costs a lot of money to travel the world. Or you start thinking about visiting family and friends and those transportation costs. So most people have a lot of trouble disconnecting the money from it. And I actually do find it very common that people like to either start their own business or they want to kind of get out of the rat race, get out of the 9 to 5, but they don't like the idea of not working at all. And it's hard for them to realize that even if you do start your own business, if you're financially independent in this construct and this with this question, you can't be working for the sake of making money. And that's still hard for people to separate. And I'm actually really impressed that you talked about self-improvement and personal growth and building and sharing, not trying to make enough money for something else in the future.
I think also what's been going through my mind with this question is when I first decided to leave the corporate life, what I did actually do is take a year off to travel the world with my wife and daughter. And we spent a lot of time on the road. We did also quickly realize it's a lot more expensive than it sounds to be on the road quite a bit. So that was something where having more money may make things easier. But I think what we also realized is we kind of like stability. We like the notion of having a good routine in place, and just being on the road provided a lot of experience, but also a lot of disruption.
Mm.
So I think that's why we've opted to be less mobile. And then the other thing that came to my mind is even if I took my wealth and doubled it, for example, would I really change what I'm doing right now significantly? And I think I might see changes on the margins where, for example, we instead of looking for the cheapest flights, I might just click a button or something like that and just buy the first tickets I see. Or rather than looking for a destination that might be good in the current season relative to what it might be in peak season, I might just go ahead and go for the peak season prices. Another part of me thinks that maybe I wouldn't anyway. It's hard to explain, but I'll give it a shot. Basically, I've heard this said before where in order to be successful, you need to be obsessed about something. There's a lot of successful people out there, and that they almost take a notion to an extreme that normal people wouldn't. And I think for myself, I just like optimizing things. I like to make things as efficient as possible. And like if I go through a grocery aisle and I see all those prices and the price per ounce and whatever, my mind just starts doing all these calculations without me even thinking. And I don't know if I could turn that off. So it's almost like, when you're presented with a money problem, I almost always just start optimizing it just because I feel like that's what my brain has to do. So I don't know if things would change too much if I had, for example, twice the amount of money than I have right now.
And that's the point of the question, is that it's not trying to optimize for money per se. So it's trying to identify what you actually enjoy doing, and do you like looking for those bargains? It's similar to the mentality of buying stocks for fun. It's like you're no longer buying stocks because you need to make more money. You're doing it because you enjoy that process.
I think so. It's kind of like that story of if you may have heard this, Bill Gates and Warren Buffett end up having a lunch and they pick McDonald's. Out of all places, probably buy the McDonald's. And then on top of that, they use a coupon.
Yeah.
It's like you don't need to, but you almost feel compelled to if you have this type of value-based mindset.
And I agree. And I see that a lot. And it's kind of, I like to go skiing, and I take my kids. And so now I am always optimizing in terms of, okay, do I get a season pass for how many times I'm going to go? Do I get as early as possible? Do I rent skis for the season? Will we go often enough? Do I rent each time we go up? Do we rent from the location? Do we rent down here before we go up? I agree. Can't turn that don't waste money mentality off.
Right.
But the purpose of this exercise is you have to make time for the yoga. And I love that you hear that you're incorporating your daughter into the yoga. And you have to optimize making time for reading books. And I'll ask you another time what types of books you like to read, because I think that's a longer conversation that's not relevant for us today. But choosing to do the things that you enjoy is the best use of your time.
Right.
And
That makes a lot of sense.
A lot of people and a lot of activities, especially if you've looked at happiness research, a lot of those don't cost money. It's
Right.
like how much are you going to spend on books in a year relative to traveling the world?
Yeah, it's crazy. Books are basically free at now. You get a Kindle Unlimited subscription for $10 a month, or you have a local library, and it's not a cost.
Yeah, with my kids, we're going to the library 3 or 4 times a month, kind of thing.
Right. Yeah.
And that's one of the observations that ends up coming up. And so by asking this question, forcing people to really identify the specifics, they realize that they're not choosing to avoid those things because of the cost. It's usually the time aspect. And so that really is the purpose of the first question. It's prioritizing how do you spend your time that will make you happier and help you live the life you want. Because there are a lot of those things that you could fit into your work schedule. It might be difficult, it might be hard, but no one really mentions kind of things like watching TV or sitting down and relaxing. Kind of like those don't really come up. And so you can choose to prioritize the things that make you happy, and you don't feel as bad about giving up some of the things that you've been doing already. So the first question, again, if you were financially independent, if you never had to worry about money, how would you spend your time? Because even a lot of people are like, oh, if I didn't have to worry about money, I'd buy nicer skis, or I'd buy new golf clubs, or I'd buy a new car. It's kind of thing. Like if I didn't have to worry about money, I'd spend more money, kind of thing. And it's forcing them, no, I didn't ask, what would you spend the money on? I asked, how would you spend your time? So the next question is, Trishul, you go see the doctor and you get the unfortunate news that you have a terminal illness. You won't feel any pain, but you're probably going to live about 5 to 10 years. It's not coming up anytime soon, so you have kind of plenty of time to do whatever you want to do, but you're now no longer thinking about the next 50, 60 years. You're thinking on the scale of 5 to 10. How does this make you feel? And what do you do with your time now in those 5 to 10 years?
Well, I can feel my anxiety spike a bit. This question definitely puts the pressure on a little.
Mm-hmm. That's the point of it.
I think what comes to my mind is that something that one of my old bosses said to me that kind of stuck with me. It's the notion that in the first third of your life, you're basically a kid and you're growing up and you're learning and you're doing a lot of taking, right? In the second third of your life, you're focused on your family and your career and making sure you get all your ducks in a row so that everything is well supported. But in the last third, that's the opportunity to give back. That's the time that you can use to kind of give back to society and be more philanthropic. So, that's what I imagined how my life might proceed for the later half of my life, or the last third of my life. But with a 5 to 10 year time frame, I think what I would accelerate is the notion that I'd put more focus on giving back. And for me, I always feel like that can be something that can get more focus later, but it sounds like if later is not an option, sooner would make more sense. So that's what comes to my mind with this question.
What does that entail?
Well, a few things. I don't think it entails a considerable amount of self-sacrifice in terms of I spend every waking moment trying to work as a volunteer doing something that I don't enjoy. I think what it means is, thing one, there's a good chance that a large part of this wealth will outlast me and whatever my family needs. So putting that to work towards a foundation or towards philanthropic ventures sooner rather than later as anticipated would be thing one. Thing two is shifting the focus away from where I call my work time now is part of the business that I'm building. I would probably shift that away towards more philanthropic efforts. I used to do a good amount of volunteering at science centers and a lot of education-based centers in museums. So that might be part of it. But I feel like the giving back part would be the biggest change. In terms of what that means exactly, uh, I'm not quite sure, but I feel like I would want that to be a stronger part of my life in terms of question two.
What are some of the philanthropic endeavors that do first come to mind?
I like the idea of education and providing knowledge to others. I think that's why I enjoy this podcast, for example, and all the writings I do on my blogs. I'd like to just put my best ideas out there and hope that it can benefit others. So I think that's a part of what I've tried to do. And one thing that I've always thought was important for individuals to have is a solid understanding of finance. I really wish it was part of a curriculum for like high school students, if not earlier. So empowering that for younger generations is something that I think is important, and including just fostering a good understanding of science and evidence-based research for others out there, whether it be youth or college age students or even adults. I'd be for that as well in terms of where I put my time and energy.
What else do you think about in terms of 5 to 10 years?
I think at the same time, there's this idea that, oh boy, I only have this amount of time to spend with my close family. So I feel like I might shift priority from also having my daughter at a daycare for pretty much most of her waking hours during the week. I'd probably shift that closer towards having some more time just with us. This may have come up before, but I do spend one weekday with my daughter. Just we do activities and we hang out, but I would probably shift that to more.
Anything else?
I think those are the key points. I like how you keep pushing this, though. I think it's really pushing me. So I see where this is allowing an individual to really come forward and really come out with things that are quite deep and often not talked about. Good therapy session, Aaron.
It is the first time I've heard you mention the like volunteering at science centers and museums. That from what I know about you, that does not surprise me, but it is the first time you've ever mentioned it. One of the key aspects to this question is you don't necessarily have to worry about taking care of your family. Usually life insurance will take care of that, or the money that you have saved up and planned on living for 60 years now only needs to provide for 5 to 10 years. So you have a little more financial flexibility in that regard. But for most people, it's long enough that they still have to work to kind of pay their bills. Kind of life insurance hasn't come in yet, so they have to incorporate how they spend their time with continuing to work a little bit. It's they don't
Right.
they don't have to save for retirement anymore because there's not going to be a retirement age kind of thing. So it gives them a lot more flexibility, but you still have to have an idea of what you're going to do with your day to day. And I like to hear that you're going to volunteer, like that, thinking again in terms of your time, but it's for some people that they realize that they would change their industries completely because they like one person said he wanted to be a librarian. He likes the idea of having that structure and being able to help people and being knowledge based, but he's only going to be there a certain number of hours, and at the end of the day he's going to go home to his family. Like it was that thinking about that was really, really powerful. That once you identify why you are doing certain work and what your lifestyle entails and why the work that you do now is able to provide for the lifestyle you want. And if it's not, then considering how you spend your time to be in line with the lifestyle you want. And it's forcing you to be more short term. It's forcing you to think in terms of the next few years, because this also removes part of that, oh, I need to save for the future kind of feeling. And I need to think about the balancing the long term and the short term. This is able to prioritize just the short term. And so that really is the purpose of this question, is you start to get into what are these things could be possible. These things are things that you could do now. Why are you choosing not to do them? And helping you focus on, if you're going to continue to work at your current job because the salary is enough to provide for the lifestyle you want, you're choosing that and opting in. And so you feel more comfortable with that, and you don't feel like you are stuck there. That if you didn't like that work, or you didn't like something else, sometimes it's the commute because it's really far away, sometimes it's your manager, sometimes it's the company just doesn't kind of provide a passion to you, it helps you develop that consciousness of, okay, if I want to design my life and work is part of that, how do I make sure that the work I'm doing is fulfilling and contributing to me living the life I want?
I like that. I think that makes sense from two perspectives. One, a lot of the times when we're putting a lot of focus on work and career, it's about that big end goal of retirement, where we're saving for that nest egg so that we can leave that job or that career. But at the same time, what this question does is it shifts that focus, as you mentioned, to the shorter term, where it allows someone to be okay with the notion that it doesn't always have to be about that end goal. It's okay to have goals that are less than retirement age away.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to talk about things that you want to do in the short and medium term, and put focus on them, because after all, your life isn't something that begins when you retire. It can begin today.
Exactly. The final question from Kinder's 3 questions: if you go see the doctor and this time you learn that you only have 24 hours to live, again, you won't feel any pain. Now, what would you regret? Or what would you feel that you missed out on?
This one is interesting because I think I would have answered it completely differently a few years ago than I
Before
do
your
right
daughter was
now.
born?
Before my daughter was born, before I shifted careers and shifted my work situation, and before I decided to prioritize my life around shorter term goals and where I am right now. And what comes to mind when I hear this question is I feel pretty good right now about these changes I put into place in terms of reducing the amount of regret I feel. Because I honestly, I don't feel much. I feel like I've done a bunch of things that have put me in a good position on where I want to be. And I think I would have liked the opportunity to do more of that giving back notion that I mentioned in question 2.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that would have been something good to do, but I also realize, there's room for that with whatever portfolio I've put together on my end. So I feel like that part will also get some, if not the full amount of attention I wanted it to have. Some things that I've done recently have also helped relieve my reservations or my regret as respect to the third question. Aaron, I mentioned this briefly, I think in passing, but I spent the past few years working on a novel with my father, fiction, and we just published it. My dad has spent his whole life working on his career, and I've done the same, and we never had a chance to interact and work on a project after his 70 years and my almost 40. So having that opportunity is something that I probably would have regretted if I didn't have that. And I can think of how I've shifted focus towards these types of things that have helped with this particular question. So I don't think I'd feel too bad. I mean, it's a very sad thing. I can see how it is, but
what would you feel like that you would miss out on?
right, yeah, that's what I'm searching my brain for. I feel like I've done a lot. I've lived a lot, and I've seen enough. It'd be great to spend a lot more time watching my daughter grow up, and I'm gonna miss out on a lot of things like that, and growing old with my wife. But sometimes you only have 24 hours, so I don't think you can change those things if you only have 24 hours. I guess that's where my mind is going. Right? What do you do about that? What do you do about the things that you obviously can't change? It just is what it is. Besides, accept it.
What are you looking forward to over the next year that you would miss out on?
It's more of what I've been doing. We have a handful of trips lined up over the next year, domestic and international, and I obviously won't get to go on those, but I feel like I've kind of done all that for a good part of my life. So it won't be something like, oh shucks, if I only could have seen the Taj Mahal one more time. It's probably not that. Certainly being able to see the people I care about one more time, at least over the next year, would be a regret. I can say that. Yeah.
Anything specific related to your wife or daughter?
As I mentioned, there's my daughter has her whole life in front of her. I always wonder if she might hear these recordings when she's able to understand. But maybe that might be one of the few things that I can provide for her if I'm not here. These are some pretty deep questions, Aaron.
That really is the point of them. And it requires sometimes someone else pushing you to go deeper.
Right. Yeah, I can see that. When I first learned about these questions, I tried them on others, but I've never pointed them back at myself. So thank you for giving me that opportunity.
It's my pleasure. Again, the purpose of this question is really getting down to the things. A big part of kind of life happiness is that anticipation. You're looking forward to something. And when you remove that, you're forced to realize, why was I looking forward to it? What was I hoping for? The bucket list idea comes up, and for me, I realize I like to play golf, and so I'd like to play St. Andrews, or I'd like to play Augusta, like the world famous golf courses. But if I was only to live 24 hours, I wouldn't miss that part. So it made me realize, like, it wasn't that important. And I have had enough time skiing with my dad and with my children that I feel like I wouldn't miss that part either. For me, the general theme as I went through these three questions for myself was that I was going to miss teaching my kids about life and values and certain skills. And I love the idea of teaching my kids how to throw and catch. 'Cause I love playing catch. I like being able to throw, and that's especially part of softball. And I love sports, and I want to pass that love of sports on to my kids. And so when I went through these questions myself, this was actually the impetus for starting my own business, was that I realized the salary I had was not as important as the life I wanted to live and being there for my kids. I want to be able to spend more time coaching their sports teams and really teaching them how to enjoy sports, and how to how to be good sports, teaching them sportsmanship along with the technical skill of playing, and trying to pass on that teaching and life values, that kind of the idea of you get back down, you always get back up again. That's been a big theme, both, and trying to then I have to teach them both literally, when you fall off the bike or when you fall when you're skiing, you get back up again and you try again. And kind of metaphorically, when you make mistakes in life, you learn from that mistake, we get back up and we try again. And a couple weekends ago, I started teaching my daughters chess. And so I've been trying to teach them just how the pieces move. And that was my kind of life plan. I wanted to be able to spend time with family. I want to travel with my wife. I want to see my brother and sister who don't live in the same state as me, see my parents, go skiing with my dad. But the overarching theme was being with my children and teaching them values and other aspects of life. And so that's what led me to start my own business, was giving me that time flexibility to do that. That has really been what I've been able to prioritize. And so every Tuesday afternoon, I pick them up from school and I devote 3 or 4 hours with them, usually something related to sports or games. Kind of after they finish their homework, there's always some kind of teaching aspect. That was kind of the theme of my 3 questions. And it sounds for you, it's a little more giving back to society aspect, whether it's through knowledge, education, financial training, science or STEM training. What theme do you see for yourself?
I see that theme of, society, and also I completely sympathize or relate to what you're saying about, being there for the teaching aspect and the mentoring aspect of your kids. I think that would be also quite important. And I can see how these 3 questions, Aaron, really help shift the focus away from money to time.
Mm-hmm.
It really helps uncover the notion that you really want to focus on what allows you to put your time to work, but rather than your money to work.
Exactly. And you get so as you go down these conversations, and this is just kind of one exercise that I do with clients, but you start getting things of, instead of designing your life around your work, make sure that you're designing your work around your life, like prioritizing your life in your schedule and then making work fit that. Now that everyone has certain restrictions there, but make sure you're focusing on the right things. Make sure you're focusing on the things that matter to you. What are the values that you have in life, and how do you prioritize those? And for a lot of people, they haven't taken the time to really think about, what are the values I have in life and how do I prioritize those? So this stage in the Kinder training is really forcing the clients to be introspective, think about their lives, and then once they have that clarity of what that future freedom looks like, some of the things they realize, I can start doing that now. There's no reason for me to wait until something happens in the future. Some of these things I can implement now. You can read more books now. You have to kind of choose what part of your time is less important that you have been doing that you have been choosing to do instead of reading, and how are you comfortable giving that up to spend more time reading? Because that other thing wasn't a priority in your life, and reading is a priority in your life. And that doesn't cost anything.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. And I like the way that these questions can also uncover, like you're saying, goals that you may have, but you're reluctant to put focus on because you're
Mm-hmm.
always thinking about that long-term big goal of retirement, when in fact, as we've said, life is a lot more than that end game.
Yep. So maybe as you are building your business, one of the things you could do is devote an hour in the middle of the day to reading. Maybe prioritize reading for fun and pleasure while you're eating lunch or something like that.
Right.
One time where you would pull up a scientific article on happiness research, instead pull out your Kindle and read for fun.
Yeah, it's all about that priority. You've done this with me a few times. How many tabs do you have open on your on your computer right
now? Let's see, that's about 12. This one's about another 12. And this one's only 6.
Right. So I'm a little ashamed to say this right now, but on Google Chrome on your phone, if you get past 100, it stops counting and it turns into a little smiley face. So,
I did not know that.
Yeah, I've been above 100 for some time now. There's only so much time, but
okay, hold on.
I like the fact that knowing what I feel is important is the first step in a battle, and that's what I like to uncover as well when I'm speaking with clients.
Okay, here's another little fun exercise. If you go open your first tab, so I use an iPhone, I have Safari. What is the date of the thing on your first tab?
Oh boy, I don't know if it'll tell me a date in
Okay, mine happens to be an article about football by Robert Mays of The Ringer from August 24th of 2017.
Right.
So I've had this tab open for 2.5 years.
That might be even true for this one. I had a lot of parenting ones, like probably before my daughter was born, but here are the first few of my, list of plus 100. How does criticism affect how children develop? The effect of overparenting or helicopter parenting in a nanny state. how to avoid a materialistic child. I think I'm waiting until my daughter is old enough for
Oh, man, those are good ones. Those are a lot better.
Relevant.
Mine is the misunderstood art of play calling.
There's a time and a place for everything, I guess.
Yeah. Well, this is a great conversation, and I hope that, Trishul, you found this to be helpful, but also that our listeners found this to be helpful. That this is what a good financial planner or financial advisor does is, yes, let's answer all the technical money questions. That's just the baseline. But how do you use your money? How do you use your resources to live the life you want? And sometimes you've never thought about the life you want. And that's what these 3 questions are specifically designed for, is helping you realize what is the life you want. And then everything else around that is planning around that.
Right. Yeah, I think it's been a great conversation. I really like the questions, and I like how they can uncover things that not even the client themselves thought were important in their lives. I
Mm-hmm.
like to use them early on in the conversation because it's hard to come up with a plan if you really don't have a good idea of the goals that a client feels are important in their lives. So I think it's a good thing, and it also highlights a notion that it's not only about money, or even it's not mainly about money or financial freedom. It really is about having this notion of life freedom or time freedom. So I think it's fairly important that when you're coming up with a plan, that there's some focus on these things rather than, just the buckets of where the dollars end up in and how they get allocated.
Yep. Well, thank you very much for your time, Trishul. I love these conversations and that I mentioned some of my clients end up crying, and that is kind of a sign that they went deep and emotional and they were willing to be kind of intimate with their feelings. And everyone who goes through this with me responds that they loved going through this process, that sometimes it truly is life-changing. Sometimes just, oh man, thank you for this. It helps develop a little clarity of the decisions I want in life.
Good stuff, Aaron. And I look forward to turning the tables on you one day.
Okay, I will let you. You can either ask the same 3 questions if you want, because I have spent a lot of time, both personally and through training, thinking about how they apply to me, so I can answer them. And I may not get as emotional because I've done it a few times. Or you can ask other questions that you might want that might be relevant.
Well, that sounds good. We'll leave our listeners in suspense on which way that ends up.
Okay. Thanks, Trishul.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. And also, if you enjoyed these conversations, do subscribe to our podcast and do leave a review if you really liked what you've heard. We appreciate your feedback. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
We appreciate you joining us today for this episode of the Mind Money Spectrum podcast. Be sure to visit mindmoneyspectrum.com to access the entire library of episodes. Remember, it's not black and white, but the wide spectrum of gray area where you get to pursue the freedoms you want in life. Opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested in directly. Have a nice day.